Hello, today we are going to learn to develop this beautiful loan and mortgage calculator in Microsoft Excel. In this template, all a user needs to input is the amount of the loan, the annual interest rate, the term of the loan in years, and finally the frequency of payment, which can be yearly, biannually, quarterly, and monthly. Once you enter these four values in this template, everything else will automatically update and it will answer all the questions that you have regarding the loan and mortgage. For example, the first question that we are going to answer is, what is going to be the periodic payment? Now that period can be year, or that can be quarter, or that can be monthly or biannually. And once you select that frequency, your related periodic payment will be calculated automatically. The next question, after that periodic payment, once we have made that, what is the remaining balance of our amount? That will be calculated, and we will also be able to calculate that in the selected periodic payment, how much is the interest and what is the principal loan repayment. So you can see that all the questions related to loan and mortgage are going to be answered automatically with this template. Now to start developing this template, I will open a blank Excel file. Now in this blank file, first of all, let us list down all the values that a user needs to input. The first value is going to be the amount of the loan. Secondly, the term of the loan, and this is going to be in years. Then we have to find out the interest rate. And of course that should also be the annual interest rate that a user should be mentioning here. And we are focusing on annual because when we are talking about loan with any lender or bank, these terms are always yearly. So that's why we are mentioning that in years here. And finally, we also need to talk about the frequency of payment that we need to make. And now the amount of the loan, the term, and the interest rate, all these values will be entered by the user, and this can be any amount. But when we talk about frequency, we know that there are only going to be four options: monthly, quarterly, biannually, or annually. So I want this field to be standardized, and rather than entering it manually, I want my user to select the value from a drop down. So I will be making a list here first, and this list is going to be, it can be monthly, it can be quarterly, it can be biannually, and then it can be annually as well. So now to apply this list here, what we need to do is to click on this data tab and click on this data validation icon. And once you do that, this pop-up will open and you need to select the list from here. And once you have selected the list, now system is asking you for the source of the list. You will select on this icon and now select this list here and then click OK. And now you can see a small icon, a drop down icon on this cell. And once you click here on this icon, you can see you have these monthly, quarterly, biannually, and annually options. Now if we enter some dummy data here, so for example, if I say my loan amount is $80,000, my term of the loan is 5 years, my interest rate, my annual interest rate is 12%, and if I say my frequency is going to be, for example, quarterly. Now if we enter this dummy data here, we can talk more meaningfully, and to calculate all those values of the payment and the interest payment, before we start writing the Excel formulas, we need to talk about something very important, and that is, in the formulas of all those calculations, we will not be putting the annual interest rate, and we will not be putting the term of the loan in years. Rather, we will be talking about the same interest rate and same term in the same language as the frequency. What that means is, if you are saying that your installments are being made quarterly, the interest rate should also be for the quarter, and total term of the loan should also be mentioned in quarters. Similarly, if I make it monthly, now here we have to choose the interest rate, which should be the monthly interest rate, and the term of the loan which should also be mentioned in months. Now to achieve this, what I am going to do is I'm going to say what is going to be the total number of periods, and if I make it short I can say total periods. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna say that if we talk about months, there are going to be 12 months in a year. If we talk about quarterly, there are going to be 4 quarters in a year. If we talk about biannually, there are going to be 2 biannuals in a year. And if we talk about annually, there is going to be 1 in a year. So I have made this list, and on the basis of this I will select total periods here dynamically based on the value that is selected here. And you can do that by multiple ways. I mean, XLOOKUP is the best formula, but since a lot of users don't have the Excel 365, we would be using VLOOKUP here. So I would say equals VLOOKUP, and now I would say the lookup value should be this value here in this particular cell B6, press comma. The table from where the value should be selected is this one, press comma again, and the column index from my selected table, I want to pick up the values from the second column, and then we would be giving the argument of false here to make sure that the exact match is selected. Now press enter and your value would be selected. Now if we select quarterly here, you can see that the answer here is 4. If we select biannually, the answer is 2 from this list, and if we select annually, the answer is 1. Now by doing this, the benefit would be now I can calculate the term dynamically, which means that if I just apply a simple formula that please go to the term of the loan in years and then multiply with the number of periods that are mentioned here. Now you can see that our term is selected here as 60. This is because there are 5 years of the loan term, and then each year has 12 months, so 5 into 12 is 60. Similarly, if I make it quarterly, the term will automatically be updated to say 20, which means that there are 5 years. In each year there are 4 quarters, so 5 into 4, that makes it 20, so the term is 20. So now my term will be automatically updated when I change the frequency. Now on the basis of this, I can calculate the interest rate that should be applied in my formulas, and for that I would say whatever is the annual interest rate, just divide that with total number of periods, which in this case you can see that if we are talking about the quarterly frequency, we are dividing the interest rate of 12%, which is for the year, to 4, which means that now my interest rate will be the quarterly interest rate. And if I just make it percentage here, you will be able to see the better answer. Just to show that again, if I just change it to monthly, now you can see that the formula of the calculations that we are going to make, the interest rate that we are going to feed is 1%, and this is because the frequency is monthly, which means that if the interest rate is 12% for the year, the calculations should be using 1% because we are working on monthly basis. And similarly, the term has also been updated accordingly. So with this, now we are ready to start our calculations, but before we do that, I would request you to hide this data from here. We don't need to see that on our calculator, but just not to forget that this data has been used in the values here. So to hide that, either you can simply insert the columns here, or you can use another method, and that is simply change the font color of these cells to white. And once you do that, you can see the data is still there, but you are not just seeing that on the face of your screen, and that is how we make it neat. Now we are ready to start our calculator. So for that, first of all, let me input the headings here. First of all, there should be period number, and then there should be the annual installment, not an annual, I'm sorry, there should be the periodic installment, and then there should be the interest in that installment, how much interest we have paid in that particular installment, and then there should be principal in that installment, and finally there should be the balance amount of the loan. So if I just change the color of that to make it a heading style, this should be a little nice, right? So let me also fix a little bit of the alignment. Now after this, let us make a list of all the periods. So let us begin from 0 and then we have to move downwards 1, 2, 3 and 4. So rather than doing it manually, I will just click here and I will say fill series, and in my columns I would say that step value should be each time, one each time, and then the stop value I'm randomly going to put 1000 here because usually that is going to be the maximum value. Now if we scroll down, you can see that we have the periods in this column here up to the 1000, and then this list stops. Now you can work a little more intelligently and make it dependent on this term selected here, but I think we can leave it here and we can select this complicated part for the remaining steps in the future here that we are going to do in these calculations. So I will use this period list, a simple one. Now in the calculation of installment, we have to use the PMT function of Excel. So I would say equals PMT. Now this PMT function calculates the amount of payment for a loan based on constant payments and constant interest rates. So it simply says that if your periodic installment is going to be equal each time, which is definitely usually the case, and it also says that if your interest rate is constant for the whole term, which is also usually the case, then you can use this function. So I will say that use the PMT function. We will always be doing that. Don't worry about these two conditions because these are usually always met. Now the first argument is the rate, which is rate of the interest. Now you can see that you have the rate here 12%, but please keep in mind that we are not supposed to use this rate from here. Rather we have to use this interest rate, which is adjusted for the frequency. So I will be selecting this rate from here. Then we have NPER, which is number of periods, and again please do not select this 5, rather we have to use the number of periods from here. Then system is asking you for the present value PV, which is basically the value today for all this project, and all this complete project has only one value today. Here you can see, which is the amount of the loan. So I would select $80,000 as my present value for which I am working, and then there is a future value option which we need to skip here. So I will press comma again, and then system is asking you for the type, which is going to be 0 here, which is going to be end of the period. So you can select 0 here and now close the bracket, or you can simply ignore the last two options and simply close the bracket after breathe 3 and move on, and system will automatically understand what you are trying to do. But I will just enter these two arguments here and press enter, and this has calculated the installment for me. Now please keep in mind that there is no installment at period 0, so we just have to delete it from period 0 and do that again for period 1. Good that we will be able to repeat it one time. So I'm going to delete it from here and I will say equals PMT function, the rate is 1% and the number of periods are 60 and the present value is 80,000, no future value, and this is going to be end of the period, and close the bracket, and you have the answer here. Now you will notice one thing, and that is this cash flow here is in negative. This is because we are going to pay the installment. So system is assuming that if we have taken the loan, we have to pay it back, so the installment would be a negative cash flow for us. But if you don't like to see it negative, you can make this value here negative, in which case your answer will automatically become positive. Now before I move forward, I would like to format this complete schedule properly. So I will select all these cells and I would say please make them a number format with a comma separator and no decimal. Now this complete table has been adjusted for this format. So I would say that my quarterly installments, I'm sorry, not quarterly, the monthly installment is going to be 1780. Now what is going to be the balance after this installment? So let us talk about the beginning. At the beginning, our balance at the period 0, when the term of the loan just started, our balance was equal to this value here, which is 80,000. Now once we have paid this amount of installment, this balance should update. But before I say that this loan balance has been updated by making the installment, we have to know that out of this installment, what is the amount of interest and what is going to be the principal. This is because when you pay the interest on loan, the loan balance would not decrease, that would remain as is. The amount of the loan is only decreased with the amount of the principal that you pay in your installment. So before we talk about balance, we have to calculate the interest and the principal. Let us calculate interest first. So I would say equals IPMT. So this is the function that can calculate the interest for you for any particular installment in any loan. So I would say equals IPMT, and now let us enter the data here. The rate is going to be 1%. The second argument is PER, which is the number of period for which we are making this installment. So here I would say the number of period is 1, which is this one here, and then total number of periods, which are 60, and then the present value of the loan, that is 80,000. No future value, so I'll press comma again, and type of the loan is 0, which means that we are making the installment at the end of the period. Now close the bracket, and here you have your interest payment. Now if out of 1780, 800 is the interest, the remaining is the principal. You can take the difference between these two, right? But I'm just going to use the Excel formula for that. No reason for this. You can just take the difference as well, but I'm going to use the Excel formula just to teach you that this option is there as well. And this formula is PPMT. So PPMT basically calculates the principal in that particular payment. So I would say PPMT, the rate is here 1%. The period number for this one is 1. The total number of periods are 60. The present value of the loan is 80,000, and the future value is, we are gonna ignore that, and the type is that we have to pay at the end of the period. Close the bracket, press enter, and you can see that the principal repayment is going to be 980 here. By the way, if we could just take the difference of these two, that answer should also be the same, but let us delete that. Now you know that in your installment what was the principal and what was the interest. So we now can calculate the balance, and that is the previous balance of the loan minus the principal repayment that we have just done in this installment. And now you can see that this has actually reversed, and this is because my starting value is already negative. So to handle the negative, I will be doing the plus here, so that this negative value can move towards the zero balance. So this value out of that 80,000 negative loan, 980 has been paid, so the loan amount has been reduced, and now this amount is 79,020. Now all you need to do is to copy paste this formula to the cells below. But before you do that, please keep in mind we have to make the cell references absolute where needed. So if I just select this formula here, the installment formula, and press F2 on my keyboard, the formula will open and you can see which cells have been used. Now as I move forward, I want to keep all these cell references intact, right? So the loan amount will remain in the same cell, so is the term, and so is the interest rate. So all of these references will become absolute references, and to do that I will press F4, and by doing this you can see I have locked the cell references. And now you have done that, just double click and you can see that the formula has been copied to the cells below. But as you will go down, you will notice something is strange, and that is the total term of the loan is 60. But my system is saying that even if I am moving down 60, there is an installment amount. So this is definitely a limitation here, which we are going to fix in a minute. After this, now let us talk about the interest formula as well. we are just going to copy paste this to the cells below, but before we do that, let us make the cell references absolute where needed. Now as we move down, we want all of these references to be intact, but not this one. As the periods will change, period 2, period 3, period 4, I will make sure that these references are changed and we are feeding a right period to this formula. So this cell A13 should not be made absolute, but everything other than that should be absolute reference. So we have selected all of that, we have made all others absolute reference, and now as we double click, you will see that you have calculated the interest correctly. As we scroll down, you will see that this formula is taking care of the period. So in the 60th period, our loan term has completed, so there is no interest in the period 61, 2 and 3 and 4. But yes, there is an error and that should not be appearing like that. So we are coming back in a minute to fix that. But other than that, you can see everything in my schedule is working absolutely fine. Let us do the same for principal. All the cell references should be absolute except the A13. So for B9, make it absolute, B8, make it absolute, B3, make it absolute. And now you can double click and you can see that you have correctly calculated all the values up to period number 16. After that, let us go back and let us also talk about the balance payment. And for that, all I need to do is just to double click here to copy paste this to all the cells below, and you can see that every time I'm making the installment, my loan amount is decreasing, and in the period number 60 it has become 0. So again, here we can see that at the end of period number 60, my loan amount has become 0. So my schedule is now working absolutely fine. The only exception is I am seeing the errors in these 3 cases, which should not be when the term has been completed, and I should not be seeing those errors. I should be able to see a blank cell there. Now to avoid the errors, all we need to do is to wrap this formula here in if error statement. So I will press F2 to open my formula, come here and start typing if error. And once you see this blue if error button here, simply press the tab key and you can see now what is happening. If error bracket value, please give me this value, but if error, then give me this value. Now you can write anything here, but please make sure you are writing that in inverted commas. But I am just applying inverted commas, open and close, and then closing the bracket, which means that please give me nothing, please give me a blank cell. Now if I press enter, you can see this formula remains, this value remain as is. But now that I double click and I scroll down to period number 60 and onwards, you can see I do not have any value now. There is the formula in this cell, but I am not seeing any value here because I have instructed Excel that if this answer is error, then please give me a blank cell instead of showing me the error. Going back to the top, let us do the same for this formula here as well. F2, come here, if error, and now going towards the end, press comma, inverted commas, close bracket, press enter, and now just double click, and as you scroll down to period number 60, you will see that there is no value here. Going back again towards the calculation of balance as well and doing the same thing here as well. Again, I would say this cell is B3, that is okay, but let us start from here because this is the calculation that we have applied to all the cells below. So I would say if error, this value, but if this value is not apparent, then nothing, please give me nothing. So we are saying give me this value, but if this value brings an error, please give me a blank cell. And now double click again And as we scroll down to period 60, you can see there is nothing appearing here now. Now the problem remains with this cell number, this first installment cell, where the installments should have become 0 after the period number 60, but we are not seeing that, so let us fix that as well. And this time we are not going to apply the if error formula, rather we are going to apply the if statement. So I would say let us go back to the beginning again, and I would say first of all I want to make this formula into the second line, so I will press Alt key and press enter, and now you can see this statement is in second line so that I can focus on the first line. So I would say if the value in this cell is less than or equal to value in this cell. So I'm saying that the period number is less than or equal to this period number, then give me this complete answer, otherwise give me a blank cell and close the bracket. Let us read that again. If this cell value is less than or equal to this cell value, then all of that workings should be done. But if that is not the case, give me a blank cell and press enter. Now before we copy paste this to the cells below, let us make sure that we have made the cell references absolute where needed. So A13 will automatically go down, so we will not fix that, but this B8 should remain fixed, so I will be locking this cell. And now press enter and just double click here to make sure that this formula has been copied to all the cells below. Now when I scroll down and go to period number 60, you can see that the value has become 0 here. You can apply a similar logic to this cell as well, so that you are not seeing any period number here at all after the last period, but we can ignore that. Now going back to the top, let us apply some different let us input some different data values to see our results. So first of all, let me fix the format for this. And now let us say we have taken a loan of $150,000 for a term of 4 years, and our frequency is going to be annual and interest rate is say 15%. So let us see if we are seeing our results. So you can see here that after period number 4, the year number 4, the amount of loan has become 0, starting from 150 to 0. Our installment is going to be equal in each year 1 to 4. What is going to be our interest in each year, and of course you can calculate the total of interest by summing up all these values here. And if we calculate the total of principal, that is of course $150,000, which is equal to the amount of the loan. If we just change this term here from, for example, say 4 to 5, you can see everything has changed and your term is completing in year number 5. Your loan is completing in year number 5. Similarly, if I keep everything as is and just change this annually to biannually, now you know that even though there are 5 years only, the term is 10 periods. And if we scroll down, you should be able to see that till the period number 10. So in the period number 10, you can see your loan amount has become 0. Now after this is just a little bit of cosmetics that we can do. So I can change the color of these cells where a user needs to input values to something different like that. And let me reduce the depth of the cells where needed so that they look a little nicer. And similarly we can do here as well. And finally, let us give it a beautiful heading, that is loan and mortgage calculator. Give it a bigger font size. Okay, it is just too big, so something like that. And we can color this whole row to something more darker, and that should do the job. So now you have this loan and mortgage calculator with everything completely perfectly functioning in it. I hope you liked the video. There are some other amazing videos available on this channel, like for example advanced financial reporting with Power BI, Tableau and advanced Excel, accounting template with automated reporting, and other interesting aspects of accounting like how to convert a debit and credit trial balance or GL into a positive and negative values single column trial balance. So I hope that all of this is relevant to you, so please give it a look, and I am looking forward to see you in the next video.